Hi, I am JR. This video is Religion, the Art of Language. Maybe a little bit of a different presentation about the word language than may already be familiar to you. In the blog that accompanies this video, there is a green image of some kind of strange shapes that happen to be Arabic letters. I say strange because I don't recognize Arabic letters. And it is the word Allah. Below that are some Phoenician and Hebrew shapes. The Phoenician shapes are the origin of the Hebrew, apparently are the origin of the Hebrew letters. Or maybe we could say they're early Hebrew letters. That's based on my best understanding of the history of the Hebrew language, which is not extensive. I don't know that much about it, really. I know a couple interesting details, but as to how it formed, I don't know. But what does that have to do with religion? Well, of course, Arabic is a language that is used to refer to religion, including the word Allah, which is very similar to what might be called God or Jehovah or Yahweh or Brahman or maybe Tao. Many words could refer to the same idea. Many languages could refer to the same idea or a very similar idea with slightly different words. Like Ibrahim, Abraham, and Brahman. They have a similar set of consonants, and then the vowels are a little bit different. So these are all a bunch of words. When do we actually study words? Well, in most cases, we might not study words themselves or study language itself. All of these words that I'm speaking, any words that you read, any words, are linguistic units within a particular group of words or a particular language. And these words that I'm speaking, most of them at least, are words of the English language, but there are other languages. English only is a meaningful thing to say because we know that there are other languages that are not English that we can contrast to English. Latin or Hebrew or Arabic and so on. So far, we've ignored the issue of the perceiver of language. As I said, the little green script of Arabic letters, I wouldn't recognize those letters. I don't know that word. I believe, because someone indicated that that word is Allah, but I just believe it. I don't know firsthand. I have no direct experience, no recognition, so I just have to believe them. Similarly, with the Hebrew letters for God, or what is English is translated as God, I don't really know those letters. I just take it on belief. We could say take it on faith, but I want to distinguish here. I'm talking about believing something from a position of ignorance, and we could say humility, like I recognize that I don't know the Hebrew script, the Hebrew letters, so somebody says to me, those are Hebrew letters, I go, okay, that looks kind of, I have an idea of what Hebrew letters look like, better than I know what Arabic letters or Chinese characters look like. So let's say that that's the right Hebrew letters and it's an actual word, and then somebody says, okay, pronounce it. It's pronounced Yahweh or Yahweh or whatever way it's pronounced. And they say, okay, so now tell me what it means. I say, I just know how to pronounce it. I don't know what the word means. I don't speak Hebrew. And then they might say to me what they have been told it means, maybe from second-hand, third-hand sources. And so then we have this concept of God. Of course, all words are codes and concepts because they're words. We're not talking about the sound Allah. We're talking about an idea represented by the sounds Allah as a word, not as Allah, but the word Allah, not the individual sounds. This unit called the word Allah or God. So obviously, newborns can't make sense of words. They can hear the sounds, but they can't make sense of the words. That would include newborn kittens, newborn puppies, any kind of newborn. They can hear maybe, but understanding language is a completely distinct issue from hearing. The sound of words are just sound to them, just sounds to them. And writing is just a bunch of obscure shapes. We could say, okay, there's a sequence, there are some lines that are maybe, organized in a nice sequence of lines, and oh, that must be a paragraph right there because there's a break in it. Well, but they'd have a newborn could see the lines, but wouldn't know Hebrew letters from Chinese letters from Arabic letters and so on. They wouldn't know a number from a letter, and they wouldn't know a shape that isn't a recognizable letter from a shape that is a recognizable letter. So if you can't read the writing of Hebrew or Arabic or Chinese, then you may be able to recognize that being able to see particular shapes and even to copy them is distinct from being able to comprehend the message of the writing, the meaning of the words or of the series of words. We could say that someone who is not literate in a particular form of written code would be blind to the meaning or deaf to the meaning of a written message in that type of coding. They could maybe copy it, they could repeat the sounds like a parrot, they could photocopy it, they could copy it by hand, but they wouldn't know the meaning. We could even use a metaphor and say, for those that have the eyes to see, let them see. And for those that have the ears to hear, let them hear. But some of the distinctions that we'll be talking about in language might be a bit subtle, what would be called subtle, not common knowledge, special knowledge. We might even say esoteric knowledge, or secret, or occult knowledge, hidden knowledge. The word occult means one object is hidden by another, like my fist is hidden by my hand. So that's an occultation. Occultation is an astronomical term, meaning when one object goes in front of the other from the perspective of a particular vantage point, like that webcam right there, and one thing blocks something that's behind it, an opaque object blocks an object behind it. Or when the sun shines, we can't see the stars because the sun is so bright during the day that we're unable to perceive the individual stars during that period of sunlight, the daytime. But if the moon is full, we can still see the moon even during daytime. Even if the moon isn't full, we can still see the moon because it's pretty bright relative to the sun. But little stars, mostly wouldn't be able to see them except maybe in the evening or right in the early morning or right before the sunset. Otherwise, to see lights in the sky during the day might be a meteor or something pretty unusual. People might make up stories to explain how certain visual perceptions of maybe some rock burning across the sky, how the sight of those things might be connected to other historical events like earthquakes or the tides of the ocean being unusual. So I'm going to quote from Ezekiel, the Old Testament. These ideas I'm talking about are not specific to Islam or Judaism or Christianity or Hinduism. They're about religion, about language. And it's, again, language being studied is what religion is about, I propose. Religion is the art of language. So Ezekiel, chapter 12, book, verse 2, Son of man, you are living among a rebellious people. They have eyes to see, but do not see, and ears to hear, but do not hear, for they are a rebellious people. Or in other verses, another reference that is made, having been translated from a few different languages into English, a people who are in a stupor, like they're drunk, or they're in a trance, or they're zombies. Those would be the kind of comments. They're asleep. Those are the kind of comments that are made. So there's a distinction between people who are unusually perceptive, people who are kind of have the normal range of perception, and then of course there are infants and kittens and so on who have no comprehension of language. So the sounds of Chinese or Arabic may be incomprehensible to someone who is not fluent in those languages, like myself. We could say that someone who is not familiar with a particular form of encoded sound would be deaf to the meaning of a message spoken in that type of coding, in that particular language, those particular unfamiliar words. We could even use a metaphor and say, for those who have the ears to hear, let them hear. For those who have ears but cannot understand this message, well, this message might not be for anybody who can't speak English. It wouldn't be necessarily particularly interesting or instructive for them. It'd just be a bunch of weird sounds, right? And that would be it. Just a bunch of weird sounds and a guy raising his eyebrows and his hands and stuff. So we're talking about the distinction between merely having attention on something, like to see my hand moving or to hear these sounds. The distinction between merely having attention on something and the ability to accurately interpret symbolic codes, to create meaning or to interpret meaning. For instance, an infant might be able to actually see an object without knowing what it is and what it does. And I give some kind of silly examples here. A hand grenade. An infant might be able to say the words hand grenade, or maybe a toddler could say the words hand grenade. But that doesn't mean that they would know what one is or what one does. Can they identify one if you show them a bunch of objects? They can repeat the words, but can they identify it? Saying the sound of the words and knowing what it is or what it does are all distinct. An infant can repeat the label hand grenade and may even identify an object as a toy version of a hand grenade, but still not know what it does or why it's called a hand grenade. An infant can also repeat even the sounds God is holy, or toddler, etc., or parrot. God is holy. God is holy. Allah. Allahu Akbar. These sounds can be repeated without any comprehension of the English words or the Arabic words or whatever kind of words they are. Even a parrot can make the sounds God is holy or Allahu Akbar. A parrot, a bird, with no comprehension, but just forming the sounds. Kind of like a tape recorder or a computer can generate the sounds, play back a recording. But that doesn't mean the tape recorder is intelligent. It's just making sounds. It's a machine. So we'll come back to spiritual concepts in a moment about God and holiness and so forth. Let's return to some simple physical objects to make sure that the basic point is very clear. If an infant could identify an object as a hand grenade, would that prove that the infant knows what a hand grenade does? No. The infant might believe what a hand grenade is, but without direct experience, their belief would be secondhand, what we call secondhand, and it might be accurate and it might be inaccurate, but it would be a belief, and the infant wouldn't really know for sure. They wouldn't have personal direct experience and like that kind of faith that would come from personal direct experience. So would every infant who can copy the sounds cigarette lighter know what a cigarette lighter does? This is just a silly example again. Would every infant know what a satellite dish looks like and also know what a satellite dish does? Well, no. An infant could see these things without knowing what they do, without being able to identify them, or maybe they would learn to identify them. They could say, oh, that's a satellite dish. But why is it called a satellite dish? A toddler or parrot wouldn't know. But they might be trained, when you see that, parrot, say satellite dish. And the parrot might be able to do that. But they'd have no idea what those objects do, how the labels fit the function of the object, even if we start talking about words like God and Allah and holy. Being able to speak the words and pronounce them, and speak sentences and repeat them and sing songs and so forth, that's distinct from having a direct personal experience of a meaning for those words. And there could be different meanings that different people have for the same set of sounds. So an infant could see these things without knowing what they do, a hand grenade, a cigarette lighter, and so on. An infant could even learn to label those things and still have no idea how the labels fit the function of the object, not even know what the function of the object is. Again, you could ask a child why an object is called a cigarette lighter, and they may produce a rather strange answer, such as, it's called a cigarette lighter because if you have some cigarettes that are very heavy, this device is used to make them lighter. It's a cigarette lighter. Technically, that's even true, that a cigarette lighter lightens cigarettes, because once the cigarette has been burnt down to the filter, it is not as heavy as a brand new cigarette, right? So, knowing what something does is also distinct from knowing how something works. How does the cigarette lighter work? How does the satellite dish work? How does the hand grenade actually, why does it do that stuff? So we can know, we can identify it, label it, know what it does, but not know why or how. If you had all the parts needed to build a helicopter and had all the tools that would be needed to assemble those parts, could you build a helicopter? Would you know how to fix something on a helicopter that's not working? You might be able to identify, that's a helicopter. Why is it called a helicopter? Well, it has to do with the, I don't know, helicopter. It's probably related to the word helios or helium, or I don't know. So far, everything we have reviewed are things that would be already obvious to most anyone, except, of course, for infants, right? Next, you may be exposed to something quite radical, and I've already made reference to it in this video. Religion is the study of language. We could even say it's the art of language. Also, science is a form of religion. And that second idea, I'm not really going to get into much in this video, but we'll stick with the first one. Religion is the art of language, or the study of language. Before we explore those topics in depth, let's back up to what's already very clear and incontrovertible, something you have direct experience with, something you won't have to take on faith, on my assertion. You'll know it, it's true. Again, these are a bunch of words, the sounds I'm making. They're a bunch of words, kind of like my hands are doing a bunch of gestures. All of these words are in a particular group of words called the English language. Next, is it possible to see a code without knowing what the code represents? If I go, do you know what I just did? I just spelled 3 different letters spelling a word, or I just gave the hand signs for 3 different letters that spell a word. You might be able to copy the hand signs I did. Do this, then do this, then do this. What does it mean? Well, you might not know. Somebody else might know, and you might know. But language is the realm of the occult, we could say, because it's all secret, because not everybody knows English. Infants wouldn't know it, and somebody who knows Chinese might not know Arabic. Somebody who even does know English might not be able to comprehend a particular message even in the English language. They might not know how to interpret the codes properly. So is it possible to see a code or even copy a code without knowing what the code represents? If it's possible to see a code without knowing what the code represents, then it's also possible to misinterpret the code. As in to confuse what the code does not represent for the only possible accurate explanation or interpretation of what the code as a whole means. Somebody could guess wrong and know that they're guessing, but somebody could also believe sincerely that they're right without actually being right. They could be naive, even arrogant, as to their conviction that a particular code has a particular interpretation that is the only accurate and valid interpretation. In other words, we can believe in a particular interpretation of code as the right one and the only right one, but without really being certain. In fact, if we believe in a particular interpretation but are not certain of that interpretation, we might attempt to persuade others to agree with us about the interpretation. We might promote that particular interpretation and attempt to persuade others to agree with us. Let's return to the example of a child who insists that a cigarette lighter is a tool for making heavy cigarettes into light cigarettes. Maybe the child knows the word cigarette and the word lighter and the two words cigarette lighter, but doesn't actually know what a cigarette is. They just know the word. Maybe the child presumes that if a cigarette lighter is something that lightens cigarettes, then cigarettes must be heavy. So they go around trying to convince people that a cigarette lighter lightens cigarettes, which must be heavy, and don't even know what cigarettes are. That is possible. Now that also could be how many people approach other subjects, such as spirituality. They might not actually have clarity about language, and so then they go and teach about a particular interpretation without maybe having a lot of first-hand experience about it. They may be argumentative. They may be defensive. If somebody doesn't agree with them, they could get frightened, angry, sad, or curious. It's also possible, if someone doesn't agree with you, to be really curious. So there is one false presumption that cigarettes must be heavy, and that can lead to other false presumptions. Or one false presumption is that a cigarette lighter lightens cigarettes, and that can lead to other false presumptions that a cigarette must be heavy. It's whatever it is, it must be a heavy thing. Well, maybe I challenge the child to lift an entire box of 20 cigarettes, and the child lifts up the box and says, well, this is already very light, so are you sure these are really cigarettes? If these even really are cigarettes, then they must have already been lightened by a cigarette lighter because these are very light. And that's the kind of logic that people do, whether it's in regard to science or their relationships or spiritual matters. Obviously, the child with the false belief may begin to defend their belief, or even with an accurate belief may begin to defend their belief, and then to accuse others of trying to trick them or confuse them. The child may say, why are you attacking my beliefs? You should have more respect for my right to believe that cigarettes are fundamentally heavy and that cigarette lighters make them lighter. Believers can get frightened easily. They may defend their beliefs passionately or even violently. They may attack verbally or physically any perceived threat to their beliefs. Believers may resist the idea that they have made a simple mistake in language. They may assert the inherent or fundamental truth of their presumption. They may gather together and adopt a particular form of fanaticism as the only right form of fanaticism. However, they will never call their own fanaticism fanatical. They may call themselves fundamentalists, but how many call themselves fanatics? Different groups of fanatics can splinter off because of tiny disputes or large disputes. Catholic fundamentalists and Protestant fundamentalists can call each other fanatics and attack each other or argue with each other. Then they may band together as Christian fundamentalists to go on a crusade to save the world from Islamic fundamentalists. Those Islamic fundamentalists may have been warring against each other, with the Sunnis violently opposing the Shiites, and then when the Catholics and Protestant Christians who joined together come to invade them, then the Sunnis and Shiites set aside their differences and focus on defending themselves against the Christian crusaders, or maybe the Islamic folks go on their own crusade or jihad or whatever it might be called. So fundamentalists are generally attacking some group as the enemy and rescuing some other group as the innocent victims. For instance, fundamentalists may want to save the cute little rabbits from the terrible snakes, at least until the rabbit population balloons and becomes such a huge problem that the rabbits are the enemy, and breeding snakes for release into the wild is identified as the solution to the problem of the overpopulation of rabbits. So fundamentalism is a normal developmental stage. I was a fundamentalist, a fanatical supporter of the religion of Santa Claus when I was 3. I was totally sincere. I was totally convinced. I was also totally wrong, or at least slightly inaccurate. I might have got into a fight with someone else over which was more important, converting people to the religion of Santa Claus or rescuing people from misconceptions about the true meaning of the words cigarette lighter. Furthermore, whatever was most important to me when I was 3 obviously should be what is most important to everyone else, right? No? What if perception varies based on perception? Wait, that was wrong. What if perception varies based on perspective? What if the backyard looks different from the porch and from the roof? Like, does my face look different here and here? Right? So, see the difference in how the picture frames behind me looked a little different, how I looked a little different when we moved the angle of the camera, changed the perspective a little bit? What if perception varies based on perspective? What if what is most important to me is actually not fundamentally or universally most important? Like, it could change over time. Other people could have different assertions about what's most important or most universal. And those could change over time too. Two people like me and someone else could agree for a while and then disagree, and then one of us shifts to agree with the other one, so there can be that change of the experience of what's most important. What's most important there's no one answer to that question. It can change. What if the core of the story of ancient Hebrew prophet Isaiah details the dangers of fundamentalism and fanaticism? What if the core of the story of the prophet Jesus also repeats explicitly the teachings of Isaiah and expands on them? Then Muhammad and others elaborate even further on the dangers of fundamentalism and fanaticism. What if some people focus on other elements of those stories or make up different stories? That's entirely possible. Which is more true, when Jesus says something, quoting Isaiah, or when Isaiah says the same thing? Or when Jacob says it, or when Moses says it, or Muhammad or you? What if King James writes down something that Muhammad may have said, translated, of course, into English, right? Does that make it suddenly authoritative that King James wrote it down? That's actually the idea behind the King James Bible, is it's the authorized version or the authoritative version. And certainly, being that King James was a king, there was some authority that went with him saying, this is the authorized version. What authority was that? Well, he had like knights and tax collectors and thugs and gang members and cops and stuff, and they would go out and maybe kill people or torture them or burn books that were the alternative versions. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Roman Catholic Church has a long history of attacking heretics. Not just specifying what's a correct Orthodox interpretation, but actually attacking heretics. A long history. Sites such as Galileo may be the most famous case, even though it wasn't even really a religious interpretation issue. So there could be a variation in the authority or the energy of someone speaking. Two people could say the same sequence of words, but the authority or energy of those speakers could differ, depending on the spiritual development or understanding or personal experience of the person speaking, depending on their faith. Not just a matter of sincerity, but if they have faith. If someone asks them questions about it and someone has faith, then they may be able to better answer questions about whatever comment they've made. One person might be repeating words like a parrot without any direct comprehension or direct experience. Someone else may have quite a bit of experience, whether it's cigarette lighters or anything else that we might talk about, God, language. Some people have more clarity than others. Some people have more wisdom than others. Some people have more fluency in a particular language like Arabic or Hebrew or English than others. One person may speak words as innocent repetition, or as an arrogant fundamentalist believer, or from faith, like from a relaxed faith. Faith doesn't require fear or defensiveness or animosity. Someone speaking from faith does not need to competitively ridicule people who present alternative interpretations or who don't agree with an interpretation or say, oh, that's not important to me. Faith doesn't require killing an enemy. Someone can have faith and be quite tolerant of other people not knowing, might educate those people. Might not, but might. Education is possible for someone who actually knows something directly. They can educate others. They don't have to just say, well, here, just repeat this. I'm going to train you how to repeat the thing that I'm saying that I don't understand. Like a parrot, you can be a parrot too. Someone who has clarity can present information clearly with parables and anecdotes, with clarity. They can present faith, calmness, grace. To someone with faith, have contempt for someone who says that a cigarette lighter is a device for lighting heavy cigarettes. Someone with faith may quickly recognize the misinterpretation and have compassion for confusion or compassion for even belligerent fear. Someone with faith, with clarity, with direct personal experience, does not frustrate themselves trying to convert others to their ideas or ideals or idols or idolatries. Someone with faith doesn't necessarily say that's my ideal. They might say that's an ideal, and it can be useful, it can be important, but it might not be important to you at a particular time. They can say how it's important to them, or not. Someone with faith cannot be exhausted by their faith. Their faith doesn't exhaust someone. However, someone with the blind faith of belief, which is not actually what I mean by faith at all, they can misinterpret words, confuse labels and meanings, argue over interpretations and misinterpretations, defensively justify their sincerity and passion and arrogance and animosity, and cultivate animosity, frustration, and even exhaustion. The government should be this particular way, someone might say, with great frustration and contempt, and eventually exhaust themselves. My girlfriend should have been blah, 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 blah way. My parents should have been blah, 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 blah way. It can be a lot of animosity and frustration and exhaustion. So this is a spiritual principle that I'm talking about. Animosity, contempt, frustration. These are the kind of things that religious leaders have talked about for a long time. Apparently around 5,000 years ago, an ancient scripture called the Mahabharata was written in an area now known as India, and the content may have been passed down through oral traditions in a different language, or into maybe even a wide variety of languages for quite a while prior to that time. That story might not have been invented only 5,000 years ago. But humans really only developed writing quite recently, within the last several thousand years, in terms of the timeline proposed by most anthropologists. So prior to writing, if an oral tradition had been around for 40,000 years or 600,000 years, like, we would not be able to really specify through anthropological and archaeological kinds of evidence, because we don't know what people said 40,000 years ago or 400,000 years ago. We don't have a lot of comments on what languages existed or how language worked. Writing really was a huge innovation. Of course, language is a huge innovation, but writing, another huge innovation in human history. So apparently that scripture, the Mahabharata, was translated into Hebrew, or at least part of it was, and eventually became the first portion of what many people now know as the Old Testament. In other languages and at other times, the core messages have been repeated with varying degrees of clarity and precision. Now, that's a historical trivia. That's a detail of historical trivia. It's not really important to me what was said first and what language and when it was written down and by whom. There are stories that have been created and passed down in conversations that people have had to distinguish language, to explore the art of language, to study language. And I'm calling that religion. If someone insists on a different historical sequence, or that the same ideas in Hebrew, Arabic, and Chinese cannot be the same ideas because those are different languages, they may be a fundamentalist. They may be a fanatic. I actually do not really care about the historical sequence in particular. As I said, it's trivia to me. Anyone who focuses on some particular alleged version of history over the practical value of the teachings about language, which religion offers us, well, they may be a fanatical believer. If they're focusing on the version of history rather than the function. It's like focusing on the label Santa Claus than the idea that the story of Santa Claus is used to influence the behavior of little kids so that they're more obedient. That's the function of that myth, that religious ritual of talking about Santa Claus and presents and all, Christmas trees and all that stuff. It's for obedience. It's to manipulate behavior or influence behavior or to govern. And the accuracy of is it a literally true story about Santa Claus, or what's the actual history of it? Those might not be that important. Functionally, it's functional without people knowing the background. The reason that people would keep doing it is because something is functional. It doesn't require a detailed, understanding of the particular history of how the origin of the story arose. So beware of people who are focused more on a particular version of history than on the practical functionality of a particular sequence of words and language. Beware of them. Beware of fanatics and fundamentalists. Don't condemn them. You've probably made the same kind of linguistic errors and conceptual mistakes. As time goes on, some of those folks may be open to waking up from the dream of their fanaticism, and you may be able to assist them in their disillusionment or the ending of false hopes or illusions. Assist them in that and assist them in developing clarity about the reality of language and labels and life. You might be able to assist them. Contempt for other people, if we're trying to impose our beliefs on them from a position of contempt or arrogance or naivety, that can lead to frustration and exhaustion. So beware of animosity, frustration, exhaustion. This is really core warnings that we've heard from Isaiah, from Jesus, from so many people in so many languages and so many cultures. Recognize the reality of language. Explore the art of language, which is religion, if you find it interesting, if you find it important. If not, you probably haven't got to this point in the video yet. And that's fine. And if you have gotten to this point in the video and you found it interesting, you might want to share it with some other people, maybe with a little comment. Maybe you'll put a little review or a comment on the blog or on the YouTube video page. Thanks for your interest. Again, the title of this is Religion, the Art of Language. I'm J.R. Fibonacci. Be careful. Beware. That's the only way to have fun and get the jokes, is to be attentive.